Hey everyone, it's Triple Mango Threat or Ashley, and today we're talking about some of the cards that the nitpicky nerds mentioned in their Kamigawa Neon Dynasty set review, so let's jump right into it. So I want to be clear that I have no ill will towards these creators. They actually work really hard to create daily content, and if you don't know them, they have a YouTube channel that talks about more of a focused commander deck side of things. I'm way more of a casual player, so I'm going to have a different opinion of these cards, and I'd love to share them with you. So some of the cards I want to mention is Kappa Cannonier. They gave this card a D-, and I disagree with this because you can improvise it, which means you can actually not have to pay the 6 mana for this. You can tap your artifacts to help pay for the colorless mana. So if you have creatures you don't even plan on attacking with, that's going to help. It also has Ward 4, which is highly underrated because this makes a Sword to Plowshares now a 5 mana removal spell, which is terrible. So if you're looking to get rid of this, you're going to have to invest in a board wipe, and turns out people are talking about removing their board wipes from around 4 to 5 in their decks to around 2 to 3, and their spot removal or targeted removal to be increased from 5 to 7 to maybe 10 to 14. So if that's the case, if people are building their decks like that, this is actually a great card to include in your decks. It also says whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Kappa Cannonier, and it can't be blocked this turn. So it starts out as a 4/4. If you're having artifacts just enter the battlefield constantly, I really think this is a great card. In my opinion, I think it is a C or a C+, because it becoming unblockable is really powerful, and you're telling me my opponents are going to have to invest a board wipe to get rid of this? There's no way they're going to do that. The only way they're going to be casting a board wipe is if they're going to be losing that turn, so we're actually going to get probably a lot of damage off with this one. So the next blue card we're talking about is Cyberdrive Awakener, another 6 mana spell. This is a 4/4 construct with flying. Other artifact creatures you control have flying. When it enters the battlefield until the end of turn, each non-creature artifact you control becomes an artifact creature with base power and toughness 4/4. So they gave this a D-. Again, I think this deserves a higher rating because giving our creatures flying is very powerful. We see that with a lot of creatures, actually. One that I can't name, but it's the one that our opponents lose flying, they can't gain flying, and our creatures now have flying. So anyways, our creatures having flying is very relevant because there's just some players that don't have a lot of flyers in their deck. That's just not what their deck can do. For example, green's not going to have a lot of flyers, but they'll have a lot of creatures with reach. And it can turn our vehicles or whatever non-creature artifacts into 4/4s, which can end up being a deadly thing. This can be an overwhelming stampede for some decks if they don't have green in them. So anyways, they said it was a D-. I really give it a C because, at least to their rating, it is a cuttable card. I think it's pretty good. The next blue card I want to mention is Imposter Mech for 1 and a blue. We can have this enter the battlefield as a copy of a creature an opponent controls except it's a vehicle artifact with crew 3 and it loses all other creature types and has crew 3. It's a 3/1. The nitpicky nerds did not like this and they gave it a D. I thought this was really powerful, and I even talked about it with my Discord, which I'll show some of our conversation up here right now. This is a really powerful effect because what if we copy our opponent's Shieldred or Consecrated Sphinx? It doesn't have to attack. You don't have to crew it. It's still that awesome creature with all its abilities. So any kind of passive ability our opponents are going to have, this is going to do really well with that. And again, I personally like to play my opponent's spells, so this is way up in my alley. So I would give this a B or a B-. Okay, I'll give it a B, but that's because I really love it, and I think it's a great blue card. I mean, if you really wanted to attack with it, just make sure your commander, or if you play a lot more creatures than usual, this can be a great card for you to have in your deck. So moving on to black, we have Gravelighter. They gave this card a C-. Now, I really like this one because for Tuna Black, we get a 2/2 spirit with flying, enters the battlefield. Draw a card if a creature died this turn. Otherwise, each player sacrifices a creature. They did compare it to the other creatures that when they enter the battlefield, each player has to sacrifice a creature. But I think this is really neat. You can probably toss this in a Marin deck and get some pretty sweet value from it. Anyways, they gave it a C-. In my opinion, I'd probably give it a C+. I know that's not much of a difference, but I think this is a really cool card, and somebody's going to find a way to make it especially good. The next black card is Nashi Moonsage's Scion. They gave this a D, and I really disagree with that. So pretty much to sum it up, when you deal combat damage to an opponent, you're going to exile the top card of each player's library. Until the end of next turn, you may play one of those cards. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its mana value rather than paying its mana cost. Well, if you didn't know, paying life rather than the spell's mana cost is super powerful. This means that mana doesn't need to be there when we can just cast whatever spell we want. It could be one of our spells. spells. Now, I will give them credit for this. I like to play my opponent's spells, so this is a card that I would personally rate higher. They may have a different opinion on that as well. Maybe they don't prefer to play their opponent's spells, they just care about their own. So, they gave it a D. Honestly, I would give this a B-, but that's just my personal opinion because I love to play my opponent's spells. So I would probably play this in any deck that's wanting to play all my opponent's spells. And just not paying the mana, like life is a resource and you should use it. Okay, and I want to mention 2 cards. They gave Enthusiastic Mechanaut a B+. And it's just another one of those cards that can help you reduce a certain thing, like for example, Goblin Electromancer helps you reduce instants and sorceries by 1 colorless, while this is artifact focused. So they're really favorable towards this, which I agree, I think this is in the B range. But next card I want to mention, while keeping the Enthusiastic Mechanaut up, they gave Jukai Naturalist a C. It does the same thing, costs the same mana, as in, it costs 2. They're each 2/2s. Each have a keyword. The red one and blue one has flying, and this enchantment-focused one has lifelink. This says enchantment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Why not rank it a B? Why a C? Why is artifacts more higher ranking than this enchantment one? Honestly, I think enchantments are just as, or even maybe a little tiny more powerful, at least in my meta, of the casual side, because you're drawing a huge amount of cards with all of the enchantments and draw spells for them. For example, Enchantress's Presence, whenever we cast an enchantment, we're going to be drawing a card, and not to mention like the other cards that are very similar and in green and white that are going to encourage us to draw a lot of cards. And now that we're reducing the mana cost on top of that, and there's even 1 or 2 more cards encouraged, reducing the mana cost of enchantments as well. And what's really neat is that this card is an enchantment. Whenever we cast this spell, we get to draw from it if we have those other cards. Anyways, my only complaint of these 2 is that I really think that Jukai should have been in the B range. So that was my take on the Nitpicking Nerds grades. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you think my ratings were fair? Do you think they were a little bit skewed because I'm a different player than they are? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, and this is no hate towards them, I just have a different opinion. I encourage you to also have constructive criticism towards their opinions, because they're also humans as well. Thank you to the patrons who help support this show, and you can also become a patron to see your name at the end of these videos, and you get exclusive rewards when you do so. See you all in the next one. Peace.